So I just had a very rough month. First of all, my parked car got crashed into, which is the second time it's happened to me in my life. Second of all, I caught conjunctivitis from my Muay Thai coach, and so I was basically quarantining like it was COVID 2020 for a whole 2 weeks. It was not fun. But during this period, it gave me a lot of time to think about my suffering that I was going through and why God allows so much suffering. And it made me start to feel bad for those that are stuck inside with like a life permanent disease or life permanent disability, and they're just on Instagram scrolling and they can just see people living the most amazing lives and they're just stuck. But then I had to remind myself what I said in the previous video about why suffering actually exists, and the fact that it exists because of sin, because we have the ability to choose our will to live outside of God's will because of free will. But one thing I noticed was that when I was going through this period of suffering, I started to be more grateful for the little things in my life. I had a new perspective where before I was ill and before all those stuff happened to me, I was just taking everything for granted. But now the little things in life, like my family, the roof over my head, I was actually starting to be thankful for more because I had been stripped away of something like my health. And when I was becoming more grateful for these things, these small things, I started to realize that the suffering was actually increasing my spiritual growth towards God. It was increasing my humbleness and my humility, which is ultimately what God wants for us. And so I actually started to see the benefit of the suffering that I was going through, where if didn't experience that miniature pain, I wouldn't have gained that humility and humbleness for those little things. And I was reminded of what St. Paul said in Romans 5. I'll read it to you now. It says, "Not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope." And I think that's interesting that he's actually rejoicing when he is suffering. I think there's one stage, I'm not sure if he's in jail when he's writing Romans, but in one of the books, he's in jail when he's writing it, and it's like he's kind of happy that he's going through these pains, because he knows that although it's a detriment to his physical or his current state, he knows that what it's doing for him is spiritually growing him. We even hear Jesus kind of talk about this suffering as well, where he says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." You see how the humbleness and the humility is what kind of grows you spiritually and what gets you towards the kingdom of heaven. Even though I had read those scriptures before, going through a period of sickness and suffering gave me a new understanding of what he was talking about. I think ultimately that's what suffering does. It makes us grateful for what God gives us in this life, for those small things. If we're lucky enough to be in a blessed circumstance where we have everything we could ever want, it's very easy for us to fall into this trap of not being grateful for anything and just taking everything for granted. But if we can remember those little things and be thankful for those things, it will grow us so much. And equally, if you're going through a bad patch in life or you're going through an immense amount of suffering, don't let that turn you away from God. Don't think, oh, God hates me and he's cursed my life and I don't want to follow this God anymore. Like, that's not the right path to take. I know it's kind of hard, but you have to look at suffering as a humbling of yourself, which is actually growing you towards God. For example, we can see in Matthew 18, Jesus says, "Whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven." There's people who are going through an immense amount of suffering. They're in a poor country, a famine country, and they have no food or water. Even though in this life they're poor, that humbleness that they've gained from suffering in that circumstance, ultimately, if they use that correctly, they will be in the kingdom of heaven and be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And so we could also live a life where we're full of abundance and riches, and then we're kind of in the least in the kingdom of heaven, or not even make it into heaven, because you are never humble enough to submit to God. You just were like, I've got everything in my life, so what do I need God for? So that's why I just want to make this quick video, just because I went through it. So I just want to give you guys some encouragement to remain humble and really don't take things for granted. God can take them away just like that. So just try to be thankful for everything you have in this life, and try and live your life with as much humility as possible, because that is what God is looking for. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. Also, make sure to like and subscribe, and comment below if you have any thoughts or any video recommendations you want me to do. And I'll see you in the next video.